Thanks, everybody. Laura and Mark will candidly discuss the most important valuation drivers for both offline and online video content in 2016. This time I'd like to welcome back Mark Robichaux and his special guest, Laura Martin. Mark, take it away.
Thanks, Lewis. It is my distinct pleasure. Oh, we're going to stand, right? All right, we're going to stand. All right. I need a standing desk back at the office. I got one. They're awesome. It is my distinct pleasure to start this conversation with Laura Martin. She's the managing director at Needham & Company, senior analyst of entertainment and the internet. She publishes research about offline and online content companies for Needham & Company. The most well-known public companies she follows include Disney, Fox, CBS, Facebook, Yahoo, TripAdvisors, and others. Maybe you've heard of them. This woman, I love her, but she intimidates me with her sheer knowledge of the industry, so I'll try to hold my own here. Laura, you've been here all day.
I have been here all day.
All right, so tell us...
I've been here all day, sorry.
Tell us a little bit about what you've seen here that shocked you, surprised you.
I think the most interesting, I would say two interesting things. I thought the most interesting data I'd never heard was the skinny bundle guy from Sling, who said that at 23 people are suddenly start paying for TV. Because I think one of your theses, and something we all on Wall Street are wondering, is whether people are going to grow out of the I won't pay for TV phase and start paying for TV when they get married or when they have kids. And what he's saying is at 23 years old, they magically start paying for TV. That's a very good fact, that if that's true, and they would have the data, I guess, to know that, because it's a $20 price point. That's actually a really big surprise and a hugely positive surprise from an overall revenue producing
Because we're also focused on millennials, right? I mean, the industry seems to be obsessed with millennials, but at some point they grow up.
Yeah, that's true. Let's hope so. I'm sick of talking about millennials, I got to tell you.
Laura, let's start with consumers. This discussion, we're really going to try to take a peek around the corner into 2016. Let's talk about consumers for a second. What's changing? How are those changes influence profits and valuations in 2016?
Right. So I think the most interesting thing is ComScore now is moved to a total home measurement, which is over your wireless, and they find the average home has 10 devices and an upscale home has 25 devices hooked up to the Wi-Fi network. So one of the things that's happening is we're transitioning from a television in the home, which is a shared device, to personal devices in the home, usually 2 each, in expensive, high-end homes, 5 each. And the challenge for advertisers is this notion of duplication, not reaching you 20 times and me not at all. Because all of us own so many devices. So device consumption, the other thing we find is that monetization differs dramatically by device. As you can imagine, with cookies on a PC, monetization tends to be a little better than on in-app mobile phone usage, where there's no cookies available. So the types of devices that consumers are using at different ages has a huge impact on the economics of their, let me call it, media consumption. So I would say device proliferation, the fragmenting of audiences. You know, I think one of the things that I have been surprised was not brought up earlier today, and I'm going to have to bring it up at 3 in the afternoon. No one's talking about ad blocking? Seriously?
What's wrong with you people? Huh?
I mean, this is something, this sort of, somebody said it was the Wild West when we were having our excellent moderated panel discussion. It's not the Wild West. This is like eating your young. Right? How do you fund content? How do you fund innovation if you allow consumers to ad block? So it's the internet turning it on itself. That's bad. That means, guess what? That's good for print, it's good for radio, it's good for television, because none of those CEOs would enable undermining their own revenue model. So I think that's actually one of the big risks to everything we've been talking about today, is that the consumers decide not only do they want it free, they don't even want it with advertising, which is the monetization engine.
Laura, can that happen? I mean, won't there be another effort to block the blockers, or are you talking about consumers actively pressing a button or skipping through an ad?
Well, you know, it's interesting. So Pandora, I cover Pandora, and they have 80 million monthly users of the free service, and 3 million of them, so less than 5%, actually pay to avoid the ads. So round numbers, there are people, and the Pandora tells you the reason we have that service is because some people will not listen to ads. Like they'll turn off Pandora rather than listen to an ad. So we're giving them an option to pay $3.99 a month.
And Hulu, too, just offered this.
$8, no ads, but our take up there we think is also quite light. So I think people say they don't like ads, and if they can ad block, which is free, that's lovely for them, but they actually aren't really, there's not a lot of people willing to pay $4 a month or $8 a month to get rid of ads. So that just, so essentially the bottom line is all of you took economics, supply demand. The cheaper something is, the more consumers like it. The problem is it makes for a really horrible ecosystem in terms of overall consumer satisfaction at the end of the day.
And just one, before we leave consumers here, you had mentioned earlier some demographic trends. Folks between 17 and 34 watch video content versus 34 and older demos.
Do it again.
Yeah, just in terms of demographic trends, folks between 17 and 34 watch video content versus 34 and older demos. Both screens and consumption levels differ by demo.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of been brought up in these earlier panels that, so give you a study. CBS, which skews over 50 years old on its primetime network, CBS isn't part of Hulu. So it takes its feed and it doesn't touch it, and it puts it on CBS.com, and therefore in the first 7 days, because CBS is getting paid C7, it aggregates the Nielsen data into its overall rating and gets paid for the first 7 days on both digital platforms and linear platforms. And what they see is for the identical content, meaning CSI, the entire hour with the same ad load, it skews 15 years younger, 15. The biggest show, which is The Good Wife, skews 25 years younger, and the least good show, which was like 2.5 Men, skews 5 years younger. But the point is, identical content, simply seen, long form, not touched, on a digital device, meaning a Roku box or a smartphone or a tablet or a laptop. So what that tells you, I think, because that is the same store comp, because the content's identical, is that younger audiences prefer digital platforms. And I think it's more where they want to watch than it is what time they want to watch. But the point is that it does differ by demo, where consumers or viewers want to see their content.
I want to get deeper into measurement and digital in a second. First, I want to just talk about something that happened over the summer earlier this year in terms of the stock market. There were two big stock price corrections in May after Disney and Viacom June earnings results were reported. There was a downdraft and the downdraft last month, and all the stocks after Time Warner earnings comments. What is the market worried about for 2016? Obviously, there were some cord-cutting concerns when Disney came out and Bob Iger said, hey, ESPN, we may not reach the goals we had hoped to. What are the concerns in 2016 for these stocks?
Right. So moving away from the digital world to the, let me call it, offline or classic television world, there's two things that are affecting the stocks to the downside, which is affecting employees' basically overall payments because their options are at higher prices than their stock price are today. The first one was when the Disney CEO on an earnings call for the second quarter, so this would have been July 30th-ish, said that ESPN, they were lowering their guidance numbers on ESPN for the forward fiscal year because they were seeing some cord cutting. They filed those papers last week, and the answer is 7 million. So ESPN is a fully distributed network, and it went from 99 million to 92 million total homes that it's getting paid $7 a month for. So you can do the numbers, 7 million times $7 times 12 months. It's a lot of money that they lost at the same time when their fees, their fees are going up double digits to the leagues every year. But by the way, that isn't just ESPN. It is presumably, it is every single fully distributed network, which would be TBS, TNT, basically every network that you guys watch. That's not fair. The average household watches 18, but 8 of the networks that all of you watch are fully distributed, and they just lost 7 million subs. Most of them only make $1 or $2 per month, so ESPN is hurt worse. when you lose 7 million subs, but all of that is in a fixed cost business. So you're programming your channels, and it's going to cost you, it's basically $300 million a year to program a cable channel, not a broadcast channel, it's more expensive, but a cable channel, but yet you just lost 7 million homes times $1, $2, or $7 a month, sort of forever, to cord cutting. Okay, so Wall Street gets paid to predict the future economically. And so it took the next 5 years of that, and it elongated that trend and said, oh, bad. Oh, bad. What's happening to free cash flow? Bad. Fast forward 3 months, and Netflix, as you know, has no ads, and the TV ecosystem generally has been selling content to Netflix, doubling its price every time Netflix renews. But Time Warner, Jeff Bewkes, who's the CEO of Time Warner, Inc., came out and said, we're going to do an experiment with one of our channels. We're going to have the ad loads. Okay, this is the first time anyone's talked about that revenue stream. So the idea is that they're selling content, and we're pulling back our content from Netflix, because essentially we think it's value destructive, okay? The point is that when you have a product in the marketplace where a consumer can pay $8 and have 0 ad loads, it reflects poorly on the product that you started with, which has 20 minutes of ad loads. So they're experimenting with half the ad loads. All bad in a fixed cost business. So you have cord cutting that's threatening sort of the ecosystem from a subscription revenue, and now these guys are saying, well, maybe the ad loads need to go from 20 minutes to 10 because there's a substitute in the market with 0. So that's bad too. So Wall Street, again, extrapolates, says, uh-oh, if everyone has to lower ad loads by 3 ad units or 5 ad units across the whole ecosystem, the US TV industry is $150 billion a year of revenue. Half is subscription, which is the cord-cutting threat, and half is advertising, and specifically ad loads are now the question that Wall Street's worried about, thanks to the Time Warner announcement.
And are these fears warranted? I mean, we're seeing a lot of consolidation among the distributors with Time Warner or Comcast tried Time Warner and Charter. The thinking is that these programmers will now have to consolidate. It seems to be getting a little bit more Darwinian in the programming world. Harder to get by, harder to live. Only the strong will survive. Do you think there will be some consolidation there on the programming side? Will weaker channels get dropped? How do you see that playing out? And is Wall Street really concerned for the big programmers, traditional programmers?
Well, it's tricky because
a lot of questions, but I'm sorry.
So no, so the answer is yes. So when you have margins under pressure, like the whole content ecosystem's under pressure because it's having to spend more money to compete with YouTube and the Netflix originals, Hulu even. So we're taking margin pressure on the cost side, meaning they're taking costs up to create new forms of content. There's 156 new series right now. This is like an all-time high. All of that is hurting margins. Having said that, there are guys who are better at content and guys that are not as good at content, even in the old economy space where these guys make $300,000 a year on salary, no risk, plus options. So the answer is the empires of bundles that are less well managed need to end up in the hands of the best managed companies. And that would be, they need a Discovery, one of the best, Disney, one of the best. And you just do that by revenue per channel or viewing per channel. The guys that are weaker need to end up having that capital managed in content creation by stronger.
Do you see those
companies.
Folks acquiring
But the
smaller?
problem is,
Go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to say, the problem is the worse it gets, the better it gets. So if a guy falls and falls and falls, it makes him more likely to get taken over at a private market premium, because these companies always go for a private market premium because of their deep libraries. So in a way, as a shareholder, you want to own the shares of the weaker one, because he's
Right.
going to get a 30% premium, not the guy that's buying who gets marked down when he buys somebody else.
Note to self, buy weak programming companies. Okay. Let's get into online video because that is another big boogeyman for a lot of these programming companies. What are the biggest challenges and upsides to online video company valuations in 2016? You just talked about one, ad blocking. But what are the challenges and or upsides to the online video guys? Because they're coming in from everywhere, right?
They are. So, I mean, I think there's a couple challenges. I think the YouTube tax of 45% is a big issue.
Explain that.
Sorry. Okay, so on YouTube, this fellow who's so accomplished on his YouTube channel, if not in his sponsorships, he gets to keep 100% of those revenue dollars, which is why he's transitioned. But to the extent he sells an ad on his YouTube channel, typically YouTube keeps 45%. So we call it the YouTube tax. So YouTube goes out, gets the ad, they give him 55%, they keep 45%. That's a massive tax, right? As you probably know, the rest of the digital world is 30-70, which means iTunes, the platform, keeps 30%. They give 70% to the content person. Amazon, where it does its books, it keeps 30%. It gives the content owner 70%. YouTube is the only one that takes 45%, which is almost 50%. And that's that's starved the digital video ecosystem, in my view. So that's a challenge for the online world. The numbers are small, and half of it goes to the platform Google, which, by the way, has over $50 billion in cash. So it's sort of surprising they're starving the guy like him, who's barely making a living because they want to add to their cash coffers. It's sort of confusing. But anyway, so that's an issue. Second big issue, structural for the digital video world, unbundled is let me say it the other way. The bundle is the most powerful economic innovation in the history of the world. So when you unbundle to the program level, it's really bad for your economics because you only get demand of hits, and you don't elongate viewing, which is why when you listen to the digital companies, they're all talking about elongating customer engagement. That's all about a bundle. That's exactly what TV does. After 30 minutes or 60, they
want you to watch something else.
They do. They let you lean back, and they hope that you watch 5 hours a day, which is still the average television consumption. This is what the digital world is now figuring out. So that's why when you now go to YouTube, they often start playing something right after what you were just watching.
Laura, aren't they just trying to become TV companies?
They should have done it faster. It's been 10 years. It should have taken them 2 years. They're just going to channels. They're just figuring out a bundle is valuable. I mean, they should have done it in 2 years.
I mean, from the way you're talking, the online video folks don't seem that big of a threat to traditional TV. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, well, until they say another problem with online video is that 36 hours are uploaded every hour. So the clutter is sort of extraordinary. And the fracturing of audiences makes it unattractive to advertisers, in addition to the fact that the environment may not be safe for your brand. So I'll give you a number that's, I think, a really important number. On their site, YouTube will tell you they do 6 billion views a month. And last year, the entire revenue for YouTube in the US was 4 globally, and I think the US was 2 after 10 years. And it's a $150 billion TV industry a year, of which 75 is advertising. Okay, throw away subscription. The point is, after 10 years to do 4 billion in an ad environment that's 75 and a total ecosystem in the US only that's 150, you know what? Okay. I would say it's not a threat. I would say that is not a threat till they fix them.
I'll segue off that into measurement. What happens when Nielsen comes out in the first quarter of next year with a total audience measurement, and they are able to assign a rating point to that video or to that whatever's showing on that small screen, whether it's a phone or a tablet? Does that help these online video companies because they now have a metric to be measured by?
Right. Well, I think there's a couple things going on. So let me start with the digital world. And that is that, all revenue is not worth the same amount, which sounds weird, to Wall Street. So if you replace an ad dollar with another ad dollar, that might be worth the same. But if I replace an ad dollar with a subscription dollar, Wall Street always values multiple revenue streams at a higher multiple because of the diversification risk mitigation, which means, Wall Street was founded, money management's founded on diversification. You own at least 30 stocks because then you take market risk out of it. Same idea with revenue streams. If you have subscription and you have advertising and somebody puts up an ad blocker, not to worry, your company survives because it has subscription. So the notion of multiple revenue streams is really important. So let's pull that into measurement now. So ComScore, Rentrack, they're going to have a cross-platform measurement from the monopolist in digital with ComScore and the set-top box monopolist with Rentrack.
They just announced a merger agreement, so they're going to be going together.
Cross-platform, TV plus digital. And then Nielsen has also announced, hopefully in being launched in December or January, their cross-platform measurement. Where the world's going, I think, from an advertiser point of view, is they want to identify the person, not the household, the person. They want to be able to track you and when you saw which ads all the way through the purchase funnel down to the purchase, which is what search does so beautifully, down to the purchase. So they want to know what you saw, when you saw it, how many times you saw it, and what you bought, so that they can become more efficient in how they spend those ad dollars. Here's the problem. Facebook measures its own CPMs. Actually, it's an auction, but it doesn't, it's closed system. You can't compare the Facebook delivery to Google, to TripAdvisor, to Bankrate, all of which I cover. That's a huge problem, right? Because an advertiser doesn't want to just be on one platform. It wants to be on many platforms, but most of them are self-rated, meaning there isn't a ComScore that, well, ComScore does rate as many as it can, but when you buy CPMs on a CPM basis, a lot of these websites grade their own homework. And it's now turning out, 10 years later, that up to 30% is non-human traffic, which is outright fraud because the internet is globally scaled and there's a lot of incentives to cheat outside of America. And 50% is non-viewable. And let me just define viewable for you because it will horrify you. At least 1 second, 50% of the pixels is deemed viewable and only 50% is viewable according to ComScore for the last decade because they were grading their own homework. So the implication is, so the implication is when you're fast forwarding on your DVR through the entire pod of commercials, every single one of those would have been defined as viewable in the digital world because it's more than 1 second to get through a 30-second ad, even fast forwarding, and it's a full screen takeover. Because it's not more than one, it's not below the fold. So the point is that what I think is going to happen as if the digital world really wants to tap into the $70 billion of TV money, they must have third-party measurement and auditing so that you know the ads were as viewable. And by the way, mobile solves this because mobile's also a full screen takeover. Harder to measure, but I think we need third-party. Do
you think that's going to happen?
I do. I think that the money can't move out of television because they're all used to having Nielsen. They're all used to a third-party measurement.
And let's, while you're on Nielsen, will Nielsen continue to be the standard? I mean, we're looking right now, Turner is talking about making its own metric. Viacom certainly has already way down the road in creating its own Nielsen metric or Nielsen replacement. Does Nielsen remain dominant? Do you think the total audience measurement metric next year or at the end of this year reasserts the company in its dominance, or does it third parties continue to be sort of splintered?
So let me give you a number and then I'll answer the question. The number is the CEO of Viacom comes on every quarterly call and says, here's the percent of total revenue that doesn't go through Nielsen. So the number's up to 35%, and he says he wants to get to 50% of revenue by next year, I guess. He has a weird fiscal, by the end of his next fiscal year, like June or September. So he is actually actively trying to disintermediate Nielsen. But Nielsen, so one of the things that I would make a really critical point is the TV ecosystem has 25 guys over 50, all of whom got promoted because they made money. More than the 10 guys next to them that he beat out for the job. So Nielsen is doing something very smart, which is they're saying we're the currency in television. So we're now going to measure cross-platform, but we're going to bundle it. When we give you the new ratings, we're going to give you one number. So you aren't going to be able to disaggregate from Nielsen's data how much is TV and how much is digital. So they're going to bundle because they're getting paid a lot of money. When you get ComScore Rentrack, they will disaggregate the pieces from digital because of their history, right? They'll give you, my guess is they'll give you a TV, they'll give you a digital, and they'll give you an unduplicated across both platforms. So you'll have more granularity from that product, would be my guess. Nielsen is not incented to do that. They're incented to. It's about 7% of viewing, in addition to your television viewing, is now happening off the TV. They will just aggregate that 7%, and instead of Discovery showing up at Unilever and saying, we had 10 million viewers, they'll say, we had 11 million viewers, you owe us the money. But they won't, and the average demo is better when you aggregate in the digital, but they won't break out the digital. They'll just give you an aggregated whole. So Nielsen will defend its position with its primary asset, which is the currency in television.
Do these improved metrics help or hurt traditional programmers?
They help traditional programmers. They're bad for digital programmers.
Okay. Let's talk about skinny bundles, because that's been a big theme here today in OTT choices for consumers. Do you think we're going to see a lot more in the coming year? You know, we've seen Sling, we've seen several folks come out with their own packages. Gentleman from Roku was here I talked to earlier. How will these new entrants affect valuations, and how many do we expect to see?
So let's do some numbers on the ones we have. So first of all, really, I'm going to give credit to Charlie Ergen just because he's the CEO. He really did yeoman's work. That Sling TV product that he was talking about took them 2 years to negotiate. And they got 20 channels, and they're now, I guess, up to 60 with a lot of international. He was really steadfast in that product. So good for him. Here's where we think the numbers are. They won't confirm or deny. The first quarter, he announced, Charlie, just call it Dish, announced that that the skinny bundle was in 156,000 homes. That was 2 quarters ago. Then the next quarter, they refused to announce, but they lost 80,000 subs. So we think they all moved to the skinny bundle. So now went from 150 to 230 to, let's call it 250. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. All of them cannibalistic. How much money does he make on both? The $70, where he's, I think, cannibalizing because of his skinny bundle, he makes $30. We think the $20 a month, he makes $3. So if he is cannibalizing a $70 bundle, and by the way, this is another really interesting thing about TV. They let one company experiment, and everyone else sits on the edge of their seat and watches. And if it's a good idea, they're slow followers, not fast followers. But the point is,
they're concerned about the very same thing, Charlie.
Of course,
yeah.
of course. And by the way, it takes a billionaire, because you know what? Bob Iger would have gotten fired. If these were the numbers of Bob Iger, who's an employee, or even Jeff Bewkes, they would get fired. It has to be an entrepreneur like Rupert Murdoch or Sumner Redstone. It has to be somebody who can't get fired to take these kinds of risks that Charlie's taking.
And so what do you think Charlie saw when he looked at these numbers?
He's looking at consumer demand. The consumer wants this, but as an economic, I mean, he's the major shareholder, as an economic driver, no matter how much the customer wanted, if you're walking away from your own $70 bundle for a $20, you're giving up $30 of profit for $3, you know, you sort of have to think of, it's a worthy experiment. But I think it's been disastrous so far. And by the way, the numbers, you know, again, consumers screaming and yelling, we want a skinny bundle. He's at, I think now after the most recent quarter, and I haven't seen the numbers, he's maybe at 300,000, 350,000 total after 9 months. You know, this isn't some land swell. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about CBS.
Well, before we go there, but the industry's not welcoming any of these guys with open arms. I mean, Verizon is getting sued.
They're getting sued.
Right?
Yeah, they didn't take the 2 years to get everybody's permission. They just apologized. It's easier to apologize than to ask permission. That was their strategy.
Intel and Apple have been hammering at this for years.
Won't get it done. They won't get it done. No, it's just not. My content guys are too, they're slow and deliberate because brands matter. Do you guys all remember? Who remembers when Netflix made that faux pas where they doubled the price and they tried to split into 2 different pieces?
Yeah.
That's something Disney will never do. Nor will TBS, nor will A&E. These are $10 billion brands. There is no upside in moving too fast. In a consumer-facing branded business, you destroy billions of dollars that it takes you 3 years. Look at Coke Classic. We're still talking about that faux pas, right? The greatest brander of all time, Coke Classic. So it's easy if you have nothing to lose, but these are $10 billion brands, every one of these channels. So they're not really incented to move fast. I wanted to say all access. You had asked about skinny bundles and specifically over the top. We think CBS All Access, which is $6 a month, has about 400,000 subs. Again, it's national footprint. They don't have the NFL because they don't have those rights on that aspect. But the point is that consumers are screaming they want something slimmed down, skinnier. They're just not showing up at the door. I mean, they're just not showing up to buy these when they're offered. Basically, what it does is undermine the value of the bundle that you have when, A&E was ranked like, I don't know, 50th, and then they got this little program called Duck Dynasty, and for 2 years, till those guys self-exploded, you know, they were the #1 network for the entire year or two that Duck Dynasty was on, and that friction-free turning the channel is really valuable to consumers.
What do you mean by that, friction-free turn?
Meaning you're paying $70, and when Walking Dead shows up on AMC, you stop watching something else and you turn to AMC for Walking Dead. Mad Men shows up on, is that AMC too? She was AMC. You turn the channel to AMC. You know, when Duck Dynasty shows up on someone else, you turn the channel. There's real value in being able to turn the channel as soon as it comes over Facebook or your friend tells you at the water cooler, you got to watch this new show, True Detectives. Turn the channel, watch the show. Awesome.
So we may not see a whole lot of big companies coming in as over-the-top choices. What about the networks that currently exist, CBS and others? What about them going directly to the consumer? You know, the big gamble, of course, is that they risk the money they're getting from the traditional providers, the cable operators, if they go directly to the consumer. Are we going to see any of that in the next year? I mean, already I think CBS All Access, we got HBO Now, Nickelodeon, A&E, Lifetime. Are they all going to follow that route, or what's the thinking on that?
Yeah, I'd say no. I mean, we haven't had a new announcement essentially since CBS and HBO announced within 2 weeks of each other.
These are experiments.
Experiments, and I think it is more likely that the over-the-top players that we get are over-the-top first, where a specific type of programming is being aggregated. So WWE I follow, which is wrestling, which has a 30-year tradition, again, run by a billionaire who can't get fired if he screws it up. Vince McMahon, I think one of the great programmers of all time, but anyway, in wrestling for sure. But he's spending $100 million a year to do an over-the-top service, right? And he gets to use all the content that he already has on E for Divas, Sci-Fi, and NBC. He gets to run it on his over-the-top network within 7 days. So he's doing original programming. So $100 million a year is one of these over-the-top. And then you're getting aggregators like World Surf League has a really great over-the-top service. They're spending $50 million a year on their over-the-top service. And you have to market it, and you have to have customer service, and you have to have billing.
You need deep pockets for something like this.
You need deep pockets. And they don't have a presence that they're cannibalizing. And by the way, let's go back to this point I really think is important. 2 revenue streams are better than 1. So if you have no revenue streams, or 1, like Vince did, or none, like World, great to have 1. But if you had 2 in the old world, it is bad to substitute $1 of 2 revenue streams revenue for $1 of 1's revenue. I'll take 3 multiple points off of your valuation when you do that. So it's really hard for the 2 revenue stream business model guys to move to a single revenue stream platform like a Netflix, like a CBS All Access.
Only a couple minutes left here. What about sports? That seems like the most natural to go over the top. Why doesn't the NFL or one of those guys start their own OTT service?
They've sold all the rights. They have a 10-year deal with ESPN. They've sold the rights offshore. I mean, every one of these leagues, and there isn't anybody smaller than the NFL, they're just really smart, but every one of these leagues has made a decision about how they want to. MLB, right, has the standalone. They've all made decisions 5 years ago on how they want to monetize the digital platforms, and they are stuck with those contracts, They're all living by those decisions that they made 5, 4, 3 years ago. And so far, the NFL looks like the smartest guy from the point of money.
Laura, I feel like we've just gotten a college-level course on media economics here. Is there anything else I'm not asking that about 2016 that you're looking for, trends or topics that you're thinking about? Ladies and gentlemen, help me give a hand to Laura Martin. Thank you.